Mother Bear sees a trapped human baby in the lake. What she did next will leave you speechless. Let us know where you're watching from you. If you're new to channel, don't forget to subscribe. The morning mist clung to Pine Valley Lake like a soft blanket, wrapping everything in silence. Autumn leaves danced across the water's surface, carried by a gentle breeze that whispered through the towering evergreens. The sun hadn't yet crested the mountains, and the world held that special stillness that comes just before dawn, when even the smallest sounds echo through the wilderness. Luna, a massive brown bear with eyes that held wisdom beyond her years, padded quietly along the shoreline with her two cubs, Shadow and Storm. They were searching for breakfast, their usual morning routine in this peaceful corner of the wilderness that had been their home for generations. Shadow, the smaller of the cubs, stopped to investigate a patch of wild berries, his dark fur glistening with morning dew. Storm, always the more adventurous one, splashed playfully in the shallow water near the shore, sending tiny ripples across the lake's mirror-like surface. Luna watched her children with pride, remembering how tiny they had been just 6 months ago when they first emerged from their den. Now they were growing stronger every day, learning the ways of the forest under her careful guidance. Luna's ears twitched at an unfamiliar sound, something between a splash and a whimper. She froze, her protective instincts firing as she guided her cubs behind a large boulder with a gentle nudge. The sound came again, weaker this time, followed by desperate gasping that made Luna's heart race. She peered around the massive rock, her keen eyes scanning the lake's surface. The morning mist parted slightly, revealing a sight that made her blood run cold. There, caught in a tangle of fallen branches about 20 feet from shore, was something Luna had never seen before in these waters. A tiny human cub, no bigger than her own when they were newborns, thrashing weakly against the cold water. Its small hands reached out, grasping at nothing but air, its face barely staying above the surface. The child wore strange coverings that seemed to be pulling it down, making it struggle even harder. Luna watched in horror as the baby's movements grew slower, its cries becoming fainter with each passing second. The sound stirred something deep within her, a memory of her own cub's first cries, of that universal need for protection that all mothers understand. Time seemed to stop as Luna stood at the water's edge. Every instinct told her to grab her cubs and run. Humans meant danger, meant hunters with loud sticks that hurt, meant staying far away to keep her family safe. Just last season she had lost her mate to those terrible weapons, and the memory of that day still haunted her dreams. But something else stirred deep within her, something that recognized the universal cry of a helpless child. She looked back at her own cubs, huddled together behind the boulder, then at the struggling human baby. Its tiny fingers were turning blue in the frigid water, its movements becoming desperately slow. The child's eyes, wide with fear, met Luna's for just a moment, and in that instant she saw past all the differences between their species to the simple truth: a baby needed help. The sound of breaking branches in the distance signaled approaching danger. More humans were coming. Luna had only seconds to decide. As the baby's head slipped beneath the surface one final time, she made her choice. With a powerful leap that sent water spraying in all directions, Luna plunged into the lake, her massive body cutting through the water with unexpected grace. Her cubs whimpered behind her, but she knew they would stay hidden. Right now, there was only one thought in her mind: reach the sinking child before it was too late. The water was shockingly cold, even through her thick fur. Luna's powerful muscles worked against the current as she swam toward the spot where the baby had disappeared. Her heart pounded with urgency as she dove beneath the surface, eyes straining to see through the murky water. The lake bottom was a maze of fallen branches and water plants. and for a terrifying moment, she couldn't find the child. Then, through the gloom, she spotted a flash of color. The baby's bright clothing snagged on a submerged branch. Luna moved with the delicate precision that seemed impossible for a creature her size. She knew that one wrong move, one accidental scratch from her claws, could harm the fragile human cub. With infinite gentleness, she maneuvered her massive head next to the baby, carefully closing her jaws around the loose fabric of its coverings. The child was completely still now, a sight that filled Luna with dread. Using all her strength, she pulled upward, fighting against the tangle of branches that seemed determined to keep their prize. Above the water, Shadow and Storm watched in confusion as their mother disappeared beneath the surface. They had never seen her behave this way before. Storm took a hesitant step forward, wanting to follow, but Shadow held him back with a gentle bite to his scruff, just as their mother had taught them to do in dangerous situations. The forest had gone completely silent, as if every creature held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Suddenly, the lake's surface erupted as Luna burst through, the limp form of the baby held securely in her mouth. She paddled powerfully toward the shore, her movements urgent but controlled. Every second counted now. The human cub wasn't moving, wasn't making any sound at all. Luna's maternal instinct screamed that this was wrong. Babies should cry, should move, should show signs of life. She had to fix this, had to make it right, but how? She had never dealt with a human cub before, and their fragility terrified her. Reaching the shallow water, Luna gently placed the baby on a bed of soft moss near the shore. The child's skin had taken on a frightening bluish tinge, its chest still and quiet. Luna remembered how she would warm her cubs when they got too cold, how she would nuzzle them until they moved and responded. But this was different. This tiny creature was so delicate, so unlike her own strong cubs. Still, she had to try something. With the softest touch she could manage, Luna began to nudge the baby's chest with her nose, her warm breath washing over the cold, wet skin. She could smell the lingering scent of milk on the child, telling her this one was still nursing age, probably no more than a few months old. The thought made her own mother's heart ache with renewed urgency. Her cubs watched from their hiding place, their eyes wide with curiosity and confusion, as their mother tended to this strange, hairless creature. Suddenly, the baby twitched. Luna pulled back slightly, afraid she had somehow heard it, but then came the most wonderful sound she had ever heard. A weak cough, followed by a stronger one, and then a loud, healthy cry that echoed across the lake. Water trickled from the baby's mouth as it began to move, its tiny fists clenching and unclenching in the moss. Luna felt a wave of relief so powerful it made her legs shake. The sound of human voices grew closer, accompanied by the crashing of branches and desperate calls. "Lily! Lily, where are you?" A woman's voice, filled with panic and fear, cut through the morning air. Luna's ears flattened against her head. She knew she should run, knew that staying near humans was dangerous. But something kept her rooted to the spot. The baby, which she now knew was called Lily, was still too weak, too vulnerable. She couldn't leave yet. Through the trees came crashing a human female, her face streaked with tears and her clothing disheveled from running through the forest. She burst into the clearing and froze, her eyes growing wide with terror at the sight of the massive bear standing over her child. Luna could smell the fear rolling off the human mother in waves, could hear her heart pounding from where she stood. Behind her came more humans. A male who must have been Lily's father, and another male wearing the green clothing that Luna associated with the Forest Watchers. "Nobody move," the Forest Watcher whispered, slowly reaching for something at his belt. Luna recognized the motion. He was going for one of those terrible loud sticks. She looked down at little Lily, then back at the humans, trying to decide what to do. Running would mean leaving the baby exposed on the cold ground. Staying might mean death. The choice was impossible. But then something extraordinary happened. Lily's mother took a small step forward, her hand raised in a stopping motion toward the forest watcher. "Wait," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Look at my baby. Look at what the bear is doing." Luna stayed perfectly still as the humans observed the scene before them. The way she had placed Lily carefully on the soft moss, the gentle position of her body, protective rather than threatening. The forest watcher's hand slowly moved away from his weapon. "I've never seen anything like this," he breathed, his voice filled with wonder. She's protecting the baby." Luna watched as understanding dawned on their faces, as the terror in their eyes gradually gave way to amazement. She looked at Lily's mother and saw something she recognized, the fierce, protective love that all mothers share, regardless of their species. Shadow and Storm chose that moment to peek around the boulder, their curiosity finally overcoming their caution. The sight of the two cubs seemed to complete the humans' understanding. The forest watcher let out a soft laugh of disbelief. "She's a mother too," he said quietly. She understood. Lily's cries had grown stronger now, color returning to her tiny face. Her mother took another careful step forward, her eyes locked with Luna's. In that moment, a silent communication passed between them, mother to mother, protector to protector. Luna saw the gratitude in the human's tears, heard it in the catch of her breath. Slowly, deliberately, Luna stepped back from the baby, giving Lily's mother space to approach. The human mother moved forward with trembling steps, her arms outstretched toward her child. As she knelt beside Lily, Luna watched intently, her protective instincts still fully alert. The woman gathered her baby into her arms, pressing her close and wrapping her in the warm jacket she quickly shed from her own shoulders. Lily's cries softened to whimpers as she nestled into her mother's familiar warmth, her tiny hands clutching at her mother's shirt. "Sarah, get back here now," Lily's father called urgently, his voice tight with fear. But Sarah, still kneeling on the ground with her baby, seemed to be in a world of her own. She looked up at Luna with tears streaming down her face, her eyes filled with a gratitude so profound it needed no words. Luna understood this too, the overwhelming relief of holding your child safe in your arms after facing the terror of losing them. The forest watcher, whose name badge read Rangers Division, Jack Morrison, had pulled out a small black device and was quietly speaking into it, his eyes never leaving the scene before him. "Central, this is Morrison. You're not going to believe what I'm witnessing right now." He described the situation in hushed, amazed tones, emphasizing that no intervention was needed. "The bear, she's not just tolerating human presence. She saved that child, deliberately saved her." Shadow and Storm had crept closer now, their natural curiosity drawing them toward the strange gathering. Luna made a soft huffing sound, a warning to stay back, but not the sharp bark of danger she usually used around humans. The cubs settled at the edge of the clearing, watching with fascination as this unprecedented scene unfolded. Their presence seemed to ease the tension somehow, making the humans realize that if Luna had wanted to harm them, she would have done so already. Sarah's husband, still tense but no longer panic-stricken, slowly joined his wife and daughter. "How did she even get to the lake?" he whispered, cradling his family in his arms. Sarah shook her head, her voice breaking as she spoke. "I was hanging laundry. She was in her playpen on the porch. I only turned away for a minute." Her voice caught on a sob. "She must have crawled through that loose board we were going to fix this weekend. I heard the splash and ran, but I couldn't find her, couldn't see her anywhere." The guilt and horror in her voice made Luna's heart ache with sympathy. She knew how quickly cubs could get into danger, how one moment of distraction could lead to disaster. As if sensing her mother's distress, Lily squirmed in Sarah's arms and let out a louder cry. The sound startled a nearby flock of birds into flight, their wings creating ripples across the lake's surface. The morning sun had risen higher now, burning away the last wisps of mist and illuminating the scene in golden light. Luna watched as Sarah gently rocked her baby, murmuring soft words of comfort that needed no translation across species. Ranger Morrison had moved closer, though he maintained a respectful distance from both the bear family and the human one. He was scribbling notes in a small book, his weathered face animated with wonder. "In 23 years as a ranger, I've never seen anything like this," he said quietly. "This goes against everything we know about bear behavior. She not only saved the child but performed what amounts to emergency care. She knew the baby needed help breathing." Luna listened to the humans talk, understanding their tones if not their words. She could sense their fear fading, being replaced by something else, a kind of reverence, a recognition of something extraordinary. More humans were arriving now. She could hear them in the distance, their excited voices carrying through the trees. Soon this peaceful moment would end, and Luna knew it was time for her family to leave. She called to her cubs with a soft grunt, and they immediately trotted to her side, pressed against her legs as she had taught them to do when it was time to move quickly. But before leaving, Luna took one last look at the human family. Sarah met her gaze again, and in that moment something profound passed between them, an understanding that transcended the ancient boundaries between their kinds. Here were two mothers who would do anything to protect a child. Any child, because that's what mothers do. As Luna turned to leave, Sarah suddenly spoke, her voice carrying across the clearing. "Wait, please." Though Luna couldn't understand the words, the emotion in them made her pause. Sarah carefully shifted Lily to one arm and, with her free hand, reached into her pocket. She pulled out something small and wrapped in crackling material, a granola bar she'd grabbed in her panic when running to find her daughter. With trembling fingers, she unwrapped it and gently tossed it halfway between them. Luna regarded the offering with curiosity. She could smell honey and oats, familiar scents that reminded her of the wild beehives she sometimes found in hollow trees. But it wasn't the food that made her hesitate. It was the gesture itself. In all her years of avoiding humans, she had never seen one offer something instead of taking. Shadow and Storm watched the small package with obvious interest, but they stayed pressed against her legs, waiting for her signal. Ranger Morrison had gone very still, his pencil hovering over his notebook. "Sarah," he whispered, "what are you doing?" But Sarah seemed to know exactly what she was doing. Her eyes never left Luna's as she spoke softly. "You saved my baby," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're a mother too. You understand. You understand everything." She hugged Lily closer, and the baby made a contented sound, already falling asleep in her mother's warm embrace, completely unaware of the miracle that had just occurred. Luna took a few steps forward, her movements deliberate and gentle. She nosed at the wrapped bar, more interested in the intention behind it than the food itself. Then, to everyone's amazement, she carefully picked it up and carried it back to her cubs, dropping it between them. Shadow and Storm sniffed at it curiously, then began to share it, their usual squabbling replaced by peaceful cooperation, as if they too sensed the importance of this moment. More voices were approaching now, accompanied by the distinctive sound of cameras and equipment. Luna knew it was time to go. With one final look at Sarah and Lily, she guided her cubs toward the deeper forest. As they disappeared into the trees, she heard Sarah's voice one last time. "I'll never forget you. I'll make sure Lily knows what you did." The story of what happened that morning at Pine Valley Lake spread quickly through both the human and animal communities. Over the next few days, Luna and her cubs watched from the safety of the forest as humans with cameras and notepads gathered at the lake. They interviewed Sarah and her family, took pictures of the spot where it happened, and set up equipment to monitor the area. Ranger Morrison became something of a local celebrity, retelling the story countless times to news crews and wildlife experts who came to study this unprecedented behavior. But what the humans didn't see was how the event had changed things in the forest as well. Word spread among the animals in their own ways, through scent marks, through changed patterns of movement, through the subtle signals that all wild creatures understand. The bear that had saved a human cub became a story whispered in dens and nests throughout the valley. A week after the rescue, Sarah returned to the lake with Lily. Luna watched from the cover of the trees as the human mother sat on a blanket near the water's edge, holding her daughter and telling her a story. Though Lily was too young to understand the words, Luna recognized the gestures Sarah made. She was telling the story of that miraculous morning. Other mothers began bringing their children to the spot as well, and Luna often observed them from afar, noticing how they pointed to the lake and then the forest, their voices filled with wonder as they shared the tale. The incident had another unexpected effect. The local authorities, moved by Luna's actions, designated a larger portion of the forest as a protected bear sanctuary. Signs went up warning humans to be cautious, but also reminding them that these animals were capable of extraordinary things. Ranger Morrison made it his personal mission to educate visitors about bear behavior, always ending his talks with the story of Luna and Lily. As the seasons changed and autumn deepened into winter, Luna prepared her den for the cold months ahead. She had chosen a new spot this year, one slightly closer to the lake than she would have picked before. As she gathered leaves and moss to make the den comfortable, she caught the scent of humans on the breeze. But for the first time in her life, the smell didn't fill her with dread. Instead, it brought back memories of that misty morning, of a tiny life saved, and of the connection she had formed with another mother. Winter passed slowly, as winters do in the mountains. Luna and her cubs slept deeply in their cozy den, occasionally stirring when warm days brought early hints of spring. Shadow and Storm had grown significantly during their long rest, their bodies preparing for the adventures that awaited them when they emerged. As Luna dozed, her dreams were filled with memories of that autumn morning, of tiny hands reaching through water, of a mother's grateful tears. When spring finally arrived, painting the valley with fresh colors and new life, Luna led her cubs out into a changed world. The forest felt different now, not just with the natural renewal of springtime, but with a subtle shift in the way humans moved through it. They walked more carefully, spoke more softly, and seemed to pay more attention to the signs of bear presence that Luna and her family left behind. One warm morning, as Luna and her cubs foraged for early spring berries near their favorite stream, a familiar scent caught her attention. She raised her head, nostrils flaring, and there it was again. The unique combination of milk, powder, and something distinctly human that she remembered from that fateful day. Following her keen sense of smell, Luna led her curious cubs through the underbrush until they could see the lake shore. There, sitting on a colorful blanket in the spring sunshine, was Sarah with little Lily. The baby had grown, just as Shadow and Storm had. She was sitting up now, reaching for the butterflies that danced around the wildflowers with chubby hands and delighted giggles. Sarah was reading from a book, her voice carrying softly across the water. Luna's sensitive ears picked up fragments of the story. It was their story, the miracle at Pine Valley Lake, already transformed into a children's tale that would be shared for generations. Ranger Morrison stood nearby, leading a small group of children and their parents on what appeared to be an educational tour. "This is where it happened," he was saying, his voice filled with the same wonder it had held that first day. "Right here is where we learned that animals are capable of far more understanding and compassion than we ever imagined." He pointed to a new sign that had been installed near the water's edge. Luna couldn't read the words, but she recognized her own image painted there, a mother bear reaching into the lake to save a child. The children listened with rapt attention as Morrison continued his tale, but Luna's focus remained on Sarah and Lily. The human mother had noticed them watching from the tree line, and she slowly stood up, lifting Lily into her arms. There was no fear in her movements now, only a deep reverence and joy. She pointed toward Luna, whispering something in her daughter's ear. Lily turned her head, and for a moment her bright eyes met Luna's across the distance. Something extraordinary happened then. Lily smiled, a wide, toothless grin that seemed to contain all the sunshine of the spring morning. She waved one tiny hand in Luna's direction, and without thinking, Luna dipped her head in acknowledgement. Shadow and Storm pressed against her legs, curious but unafraid, sensing that these particular humans were somehow different from the others they had been taught to avoid. Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out something that made Luna's heart warm with recognition. A honey-filled granola bar, just like the one from that autumn morning. With the same gentle motion as before, she unwrapped it and tossed it halfway between them. This time, Luna sent Shadow and Storm forward to retrieve it, watching proudly as they delicately shared the treat, their improved manners showing how much they had grown over the winter. The gathered crowd had gone silent, witnessing this peaceful interaction between two species that had so long lived in fear of each other. A young boy in the group tugged on Ranger Morrison's sleeve and asked, loud enough for everyone to hear, "But why did the bear save the baby? I thought bears were dangerous." Morrison knelt down to the child's level, his weathered face thoughtful. "Nature isn't simple, son. Yes, bears can be dangerous, and we must always respect their power and their space. But that morning taught us something incredible, that the capacity for kindness exists in all mothers, in all creatures who understand the precious nature of life. Luna, that's what we named her, didn't see a human baby in danger. She saw a child who needed help, and she chose to act with compassion instead of fear." A light spring rain began to fall, creating tiny ripples on the lake's surface. Luna watched as Sarah quickly gathered their things, protecting Lily from the shower. Before leaving, Sarah turned one last time toward the tree line. "Thank you," she called softly, the words carrying clearly through the rain-freshened air. "Thank you for everything you taught us." As the years passed, the miracle at Pine Valley Lake became more than just a story. It became a legend that transformed the entire region. Luna and her cubs remained in the area, their presence a living reminder of that extraordinary morning. Shadow and Storm grew into strong young bears, eventually venturing out to establish their own territories, but they never forgot the lessons their mother had taught them about courage and compassion. The valley itself underwent a remarkable transformation. The local community, inspired by Luna's act of kindness, established the Pine Valley Wildlife Sanctuary, a vast protected area where bears and other wildlife could live undisturbed. Sarah, who had once been just a young mother living at the edge of the forest, became the sanctuary's most passionate advocate. She went back to school, earned a degree in wildlife biology, and dedicated her life to studying and protecting the bears that had saved her daughter. Lily grew too, from the tiny baby who had nearly drowned into a curious and thoughtful child. By the time she was 5, she could tell every detail of her rescue story, though she had no conscious memory of it. Her bedroom walls were covered with drawings of bears, particularly one large mother bear with kind eyes that she insisted on drawing again and again. When asked why she wasn't afraid of bears like some other children, Lily would simply smile and say, "Bears are mothers too." On Lily's 6th birthday, she received a special gift from Ranger Morrison, his original notebook from that miraculous morning, containing his detailed observations and sketches. The pages were worn from being shown to countless researchers and journalists over the years, but the wonder in his written words remained fresh. One entry particularly touched Lily's heart. "Today, I witnessed something that changes everything we thought we knew about the relationship between humans and wildlife. A bear didn't just save a human child, she showed us that compassion knows no species." The story spread far beyond the valley. Wildlife researchers came from around the world to study the unique relationship that had developed between the local bears and humans. They documented numerous instances of unusually peaceful interactions, particularly among Luna's descendants, who seemed to have inherited their mother's exceptional capacity for understanding. Scientific papers were written, documentaries were filmed, and gradually the way people thought about bears, and wildlife in general, began to shift. Luna's influence extended to her own kind as well. Other bears in the region began showing subtle changes in their behavior. While they maintained a healthy distance from humans, the extreme fear and aggression that had characterized past encounters began to diminish. It was as if Luna had shown them another way, a path between complete avoidance and dangerous conflict. One autumn morning, almost exactly 7 years after the rescue, Sarah and Lily made their weekly visit to the lake. Lily, now a strong swimmer and budding naturalist, loved to help her mother collect data for the sanctuary's research projects. As they sat on their familiar blanket, a movement in the trees caught their attention. There stood Luna, older now but still magnificent, with 2 new cubs of her own. But she wasn't alone. Shadow and Storm, now fully grown, had returned to visit their mother, each with cubs of their own. Sarah reached for her camera, hands trembling with excitement, but Lily placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Wait, Mom," she whispered. "Just watch." The 3 mother bears led their cubs to the water's edge, showing them how to drink safely, how to look for fish, passing on the knowledge that had been shared in this spot for generations. The scene was so peaceful, so natural, that it brought tears to Sarah's eyes. Luna looked up, meeting Sarah's gaze across the years of shared history between them. In that moment, both mothers seemed to remember that misty morning that had changed everything. Luna's new cubs played near the water, splashing and tumbling just as Shadow and Storm had once done, while Lily watched with a deep understanding that belied her young age. The lake reflected the scene like a mirror, bears and humans, sharing the same space without fear, connected by a single act of compassion that had rippled outward through time. A young fox paused at the water's edge, watching curiously. Deer grazed peacefully nearby. Birds sang in the trees above. The entire forest seemed to recognize this spot as a place of peace, a testament to what was possible when the barriers between species fell away. As twilight approached, Lily opened her notebook, a habit she had developed from years of observing the wildlife around Pine Valley Lake. Her careful drawings and notes filled pages upon pages, documenting not just bear behavior, but the intricate web of relationships that had developed in this special place. Today's entry would be particularly meaningful, as she had just witnessed something remarkable. "Mom," she whispered, not taking her eyes off Luna's family group, "look at how the cubs are playing." Sarah followed her daughter's gaze to where Luna's newest cubs were engaging in what appeared to be a game with their older cousins, Shadow and Storm's offspring. The young bears would take turns diving into the shallow water, then emerging to shake their fur, creating rainbow sprays in the evening light. It was behavior that researchers had rarely documented. Bears from different family groups playing together so peacefully. Ranger Morrison, now the head of the Pine Valley Wildlife Sanctuary's research department, had been quietly observing from his usual spot near the old oak tree. He made his way over to Sarah and Lily, his movements slow and deliberate to avoid disturbing the bears. "You know," he said softly, "what we're seeing here goes beyond anything we could have imagined that morning, 7 years ago. These bears aren't just tolerating each other or humans, they're creating their own community." The sanctuary had become a living laboratory for studying animal intelligence and emotion. Researchers had documented countless instances of remarkable behavior, bears helping injured members of other families, sharing food resources during lean times, and even appearing to comfort cubs that weren't their own. The scientific papers that emerged from these observations were revolutionizing the field of animal behavior studies. As the sky darkened and stars began to appear, Luna led her cubs away from the water's edge. But instead of disappearing into the forest as she usually did, she paused at the tree line. One of her cubs had dropped behind, distracted by a butterfly. Rather than bark a warning as most bear mothers would, Luna waited patiently, displaying the same gentle patience she had shown on that fateful morning years ago. "You know what's really amazing," Lily said, her voice filled with the wisdom that came from growing up alongside these remarkable creatures. "Everyone thinks the miracle was that Luna saved me that day. But the real miracle was that she showed us how to save ourselves, from our fear, from our prejudices, from the idea that we're somehow separate from nature." Sarah wrapped an arm around her daughter, remembering how close she had come to losing her. The memory still had the power to make her heart race, but it was tempered now by the years of wonder that had followed. "You're right, sweetheart. Luna didn't just save your life that day. She started a revolution of kindness." The revolution had indeed spread far beyond Pine Valley. Other communities began implementing similar sanctuary models, creating spaces where wildlife could coexist peacefully with human neighbors. The story of Luna and Lily became required reading in schools across the country, teaching children that the line between humans and animals was far more blurry than anyone had previously imagined. Scientists who studied the Pine Valley bears made another fascinating discovery. The bears' vocalizations had become more complex over the years, incorporating new sounds that seemed specifically designed to communicate peaceful intentions to both other bears and humans. They called it the Luna effect, the gradual development of a shared language of peace between species. As night fell completely, Lily switched on her small research lamp and made one final note in her journal. "Today marks 2,555 days since a mother bear chose to save a human baby, proving that love knows no boundaries. In doing so, she not only preserved a life, but planted a seed of hope that has grown into a forest of understanding." Luna's legacy lives on in every peaceful interaction, every moment of cross-species compassion, and every time someone chooses trust over fear. The lake had grown still, its surface like black glass reflecting the stars above. In the distance, they could hear Luna's family group making their way through the forest. The soft sounds of cubs playing, mothers calling, and the peaceful rhythm of wild lives being lived without fear. The night air carried the scent of pine needles and wild berries, the same scents that had filled the air on that misty morning 7 years ago. Lily closed her journal and looked up at the stars. "Do you think Luna knew?" she asked her mother. "Do you think she knew she would change everything?" Sarah smiled, remembering the look in Luna's eyes when their gazes had met across that extraordinary moment of rescue. "I think she knew exactly what she was doing," Sarah replied. "She was showing us that when we open our hearts to others, even those who seem different from us, miracles become possible." 10 years had passed since that fateful morning at Pine Valley Lake, and the sanctuary had become an internationally renowned center for wildlife research and conservation. On the anniversary of Lily's rescue, people gathered from around the world to celebrate what had become known as Luna's Legacy Day. The event had grown from a small local commemoration into a global symbol of hope for human-wildlife cooperation. Lily, now a poised teenager of 11, stood at the podium before a diverse crowd of scientists, conservationists, and families who had traveled far to be there. Her long brown hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and she wore the junior ranger uniform she had earned through countless hours of wildlife observation and sanctuary service. Behind her, a large screen displayed photographs documenting the extraordinary decade of change that had transformed Pine Valley. "When I was too young to remember," Lily began, her voice clear and confident, "a mother bear made a choice that would change not just my life, but the lives of countless others. Many of you have heard the story, how Luna, a wild bear, chose to save a drowning human baby instead of following her instinct to avoid humans. But what you might not know is how that single act of compassion created ripples that continue to shape our world today." The audience listened intently as Lily shared the developments that had emerged from Luna's extraordinary act. The Pine Valley model, as it had come to be known, had been implemented in wildlife reserves across 5 continents. The approach was revolutionary in its simplicity: create spaces where animals could gradually learn to trust humans, while humans learned to respect and understand wildlife. The results had been remarkable. Sarah, now Dr. Sarah Collins, Director of Ursine Studies at the sanctuary, stepped forward to share the scientific findings. "What we've discovered here goes beyond anything we could have imagined," she explained, gesturing to the graphs and data displayed behind her. Bears in protected areas following the Pine Valley model show significantly reduced stress levels, increased social behaviors, and most surprisingly the development of what we call cross-species emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize and respond to emotional states in other species. The presentation included video footage that left the audience in awe. Bears helping injured deer reach water sources. Wolf packs and bear families sharing hunting grounds in carefully coordinated shifts. And most remarkably, multiple instances of wild animals seeking human assistance when their young were in danger, showing a level of trust that had once seemed impossible. Ranger Morrison, his hair now silver, but his eyes still bright with wonder, shared how the sanctuary's success had influenced wildlife management policies worldwide. What began as one bear's choice to save a child has evolved into a complete reimagining of how humans and wildlife can coexist, he explained. "We've seen a 90% reduction in human-wildlife conflicts in areas that have adopted these principles." As the formal presentations concluded, the gathered crowd moved to the lakeshore for the traditional sunset ceremony. The air was filled with the sweet scent of pine and wild honeysuckle, and the lake reflected the golden light of the setting sun. Lily took her place at the water's edge, where a simple bronze plaque marked the spot of her rescue. The inscription read, "Here, on an autumn morning, a mother bear named Luna taught humanity that compassion knows no bounds. May her courage inspire generations to come." A hushed murmur spread through the crowd as a movement was spotted at the tree line. Luna, now in her elder years, emerged from the forest. Her coat had grayed around her muzzle, but she moved with the same gentle grace that had characterized her all those years ago. Behind her came not just her own family group, but an extended community of bears, descendants of Shadow and Storm, and others who had learned to call the sanctuary home. What happened next left even the most seasoned researchers speechless. Luna walked to the water's edge, directly across from where Lily stood. In her mouth, she carried something that made Sarah gasp with recognition. 20 years after the rescue, Lily stood once again by the lake, this time with her own young daughter, Hope. They watched as a new generation of bears played near the water's edge, their behavior showing none of the fear that had once characterized their species' relationship with humans. Hope, not yet 5, showed the same natural connection with wildlife that her mother had developed. She could distinguish between different bear families, understanding their unique personalities and relationships in a way that would have seemed impossible before Luna's act of compassion changed everything. "Mama," Hope asked, her small hand clutching a worn copy of the children's book that told Luna's story, "do you think there will ever be another bear like Luna?" Lily smiled, watching as a mother bear gently guided her cubs away from a patch of delicate wildflowers, teaching them to respect the forest's balance. "Honey, Luna's gift wasn't just her own actions. It was showing us what's possible when we open our hearts to others. Every bear in this valley carries a piece of her legacy, just like every person who visits here takes home a new understanding of what it means to share our world." As the sanctuary entered its 3rd decade, the changes that had begun with Luna's act of compassion reached far beyond the original scope of human-bear relationships. The Pine Valley Research Center had documented remarkable developments in the way different species interacted with each other. Wolves and bears, traditionally territorial competitors, had developed a complex system of time-sharing for hunting grounds. Smaller animals that would normally flee from larger predators showed noticeably reduced stress responses when in the sanctuary, as if they somehow understood they were in a place of peace. The human community around Pine Valley had transformed as well. The town that had once been known primarily for its logging industry had reinvented itself as a global center for wildlife conservation and environmental education. Schools in the area had developed a unique curriculum that integrated regular visits to the sanctuary, teaching children from an early age about the delicate balance between human development and wildlife preservation. Hope grew up immersed in this new way of thinking. By the time she was 10, she could read the subtle body language of bears as easily as she could read human expressions. She spent countless hours by the lake with her mother, documenting the continuing evolution of bear behavior. One spring morning, they witnessed something that even the most experienced researchers found astounding. A young bear, injured by a fallen tree branch, made its way directly to the sanctuary's medical station. Instead of avoiding human contact, as wild animals typically would when injured, the bear deliberately sought help. Dr. Sarah Collins, now the sanctuary's senior researcher emeritus, was called to observe. "This," she explained to the gathered staff, "is the clearest evidence yet of multi-generational learning in wild bears. This young one wasn't taught by humans to seek help. She learned it from watching other bears who learned it from their mothers all the way back to Luna." The sanctuary's research findings had profound implications for evolutionary biology and animal cognition studies. Scientists discovered that the bears of Pine Valley showed heightened activity in brain regions associated with emotional intelligence and social cognition. These changes appeared to be passing from one generation to the next, suggesting that when animals were given the opportunity to develop trust rather than fear, their very biology could change over time. As Hope entered her teenage years, she began working on a special project that combined art and science. Using advanced recording equipment, she captured the unique vocalizations of the sanctuary's bears, and translated them into visual patterns. The resulting data revealed something extraordinary. The bears had developed a sophisticated system of communication that included elements of both their traditional vocalizations and new sounds that seemed specifically designed to convey peaceful intentions to humans and other species. "I think I understand now," Hope told her mother one evening, as they watched the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and pink. "Luna didn't just save you that day. She made a choice that showed both bears and humans a different path. Every bear that chooses to share space peacefully, every human who learns to respect rather than fear wildlife. They're all continuing her story." The impact of Luna's legacy continued to grow in unexpected ways. The United Nations adopted the Luna Protocols for Wildlife Conservation, a set of guidelines based on the Pine Valley model that emphasized creating opportunities for positive interactions between humans and wildlife rather than simply maintaining separation. Countries that implemented these protocols reported significant decreases in human-wildlife conflicts and increases in endangered species populations. Lily, now the director of the Pine Valley Sanctuary, often reflected on how a single moment of compassion had sparked such profound change. She had dedicated her life to understanding and protecting wildlife, but she knew that the most important lesson wasn't found in scientific papers or research data. It was written in the daily interactions between species that had once feared each other. One crisp autumn morning, exactly 30 years after Luna's brave rescue, Lily and Hope made their way to a special gathering at the lake. Representatives from wildlife sanctuaries around the world had come to celebrate the anniversary and to witness something remarkable. The bear population in Pine Valley had grown so accustomed to peaceful coexistence that new behaviors were emerging that challenged everything scientists thought they knew about wildlife. A young mother bear approached the gathering, leading not only her own cubs, but also an orphaned wolf pup she had adopted. This unprecedented behavior had been documented several times in the sanctuary, but never before had it been witnessed by so many experts at once. The bear's gentle guidance of both her cubs and the wolf pup demonstrated a level of cross-species nurturing that left the assembled researchers in awe. "This is what Luna started," Lily explained to the amazed observers. "She showed us that the capacity for compassion exists in all living beings, waiting only for the right conditions to emerge. What we're seeing now isn't just learned behavior. It's the awakening of something that was always there, something that got buried under layers of fear and survival instincts." The 40th anniversary of Luna's rescue brought an unprecedented gathering to Pine Valley. The sanctuary had grown into a vast protected area spanning thousands of acres, where the boundaries between wild and human spaces had become beautifully blurred. The original lake where the rescue took place had become the heart of what many now called the Consciousness Corridor, a region where animals displayed levels of intelligence and emotional awareness that had revolutionized our understanding of wildlife. Hope, now 35, and a renowned wildlife behaviorist, had just published groundbreaking research documenting the neurological changes in bears living within the sanctuary. Using non-invasive scanning technology, her team had discovered that bears in Pine Valley showed enhanced development in brain regions associated with empathy, social cognition, and emotional regulation. These changes were being passed down to subsequent generations, suggesting that when animals were given the opportunity to live without constant fear, their brains could evolve in remarkable ways. "What we're seeing here," Hope explained to a captivated audience at the anniversary symposium, "is nothing less than the emergence of a new way of being. The bears of Pine Valley aren't just less aggressive. They're developing new neural pathways that allow for more complex social interactions, not only with other bears but with different species entirely." The evidence was visible throughout the sanctuary. cameras had captured bears helping injured deer reach water sources, sharing fishing spots with wolves in coordinated shifts, and even responding to distress calls from other species' young. One particularly remarkable case involved a mother bear who had led human researchers to an injured eagle, seemingly understanding that the humans could provide help that she could not. The Pine Valley model had spread far beyond its original boundaries. Similar sanctuaries had been established on every continent, each adapting the principles of peaceful coexistence to their local wildlife. In Africa, elephants that had once been traumatized by poaching were showing signs of recovery, developing new social behaviors that helped protect both their herds and the human communities around them. In the Amazon, jaguars were learning to coexist with indigenous communities in ways that benefited both species. Lily, now in her late 40s, had watched this transformation unfold with a sense of wonder that never diminished. The little girl who had nearly drowned in the lake had grown into a woman who had helped reshape humanity's relationship with the natural world. She often thought about Luna, the bear who had made the choice that started it all, and how that single act of compassion had rippled outward through time and space. The sanctuary's research center had become a hub for a new field of study called interspecies empathy development. Scientists from disciplines ranging from neurobiology to evolutionary psychology worked together to understand how conscious choices to show compassion could literally change the course of evolution. The Luna effect, as it had come to be known, challenged traditional views of natural selection by suggesting that cooperation and empathy could be as powerful as competition in driving species development. One morning, as dawn broke over Pine Valley Lake, Lily and Hope witnessed something that brought tears to their eyes. A young bear, a direct descendant of Luna's line, was teaching her cubs how to gather berries. But instead of simply showing them which berries to eat, she was demonstrating how to harvest them sustainably, leaving enough for other animals and allowing the plants to regenerate. This sophisticated understanding of ecological balance had emerged spontaneously among the sanctuary's bears, passing from generation to generation. "Mom," Hope said softly, watching the scene unfold, "do you ever wonder if this was what nature intended all along? Not